Okay, our next topic in Unit 4 is exponents, but it's not just about exponents themselves, it's about exponents and multiplication, like what happens when you have to do a multiplication problem that involves exponents in it. Like, for example, x squared times x cubed. Notice there's not a times sign in between those two things, but you know when they're written next to each other like that, it means you're multiplying them together. It's going to be x squared times x cubed. And you know that this is going to be x to the something, right? You got a bunch of x's here, but the question is, what do you do with the 2 and the 3? Are you going to make them 2 plus 3, 2 times 3, 2 minus 3? Well, let's take a look. If you have x squared times x cubed, it's really like saying x times x times x times x times x, because the x squared is x times x, and the x cubed is x times x times x, isn't it? So how many x's is that? It's actually 5. So you'd think that you would take the 2 and the 3 and times them together to get x to the 6th, but you actually add them together to get x to the 5th. So the rule in a problem like this is you take the two exponents and you add them together. And we're going to talk about how you can still, if you don't remember that rule, just write it out the way we did in green there. But let's look at another example. What if you had n to the 4th times n to the 6th? If you had n to the 4th times n to the 6th, it's really n times n. That's 10 n's. Okay, so that's n to the 10th power. And we should have noticed here that we started with a 4 and a 6 and we ended up with a 10. And that's because you add the 4 and the 6 together. That's also why we ended up with a 5 when we had x squared times x cubed. Yeah, it's because the rule is you add the exponents in a situation like this. Notice it says x to the a times x to the b equals x to the a plus b. A plus b, you add the exponents. But if you don't remember the rule, that's okay, because when in doubt, just write it out like we did in green. If you need to write out all the n's or write out all the x's and then count them up, go for it. It works every time. Here's another example. Does it work when the letters are different? Sure. In this case, it's going to be d to the 5th and p to the 6th. Where did we get the 5 and the 6 as those exponents? Well, when in doubt, write it out. Notice we've got d cubed, so d, p squared, so p times p, d squared, which is d times d, and then p to the 4th, which is p times p times p times p. And if you look at the green, you've got 5 d's. And if you look at the orange, you've got 6 p's. So that's d to the 5th, p to the 6th, and that's your answer in this particular problem. One more. What if you have 2 cubed times 2? I want to tell you the very first thing you should do on this is if a number doesn't have an exponent, write the exponent in. We know that 2 is 2 to the 1st. So in this case, you should hopefully see that you've got 2 cubed, which is 2 times 2 times 2, times another 2. So when in doubt, write it out. That's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 to the 4th power. When you're dealing with numbers, not variables, you should go ahead and multiply it out and give what the answer is, because you can do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 on your calculator or on paper or in your head even and get an answer. So you should give an answer when you can. All right, that brings us to our first 2 practice problems, and we'll have 2 more after this. First, simplify this, and then evaluate this. You can go ahead and pause and work on these right now, or you can just let the video roll and work on those after you're done with the whole video. All right, there's another kind of problem that can happen. What if you're taking x squared and you're cubing the whole thing? Well, when you cube something, it means times it by itself 3 times. So wouldn't that be x squared times x squared times x squared? Yeah, it would. And that would actually be x, because you've got this x squared, and this x squared, and this x squared. Notice in this case, you're going to have x to the 6th. And in this case, the 2 and the 3 don't get added together. They get multiplied together to make 6. Okay, when there's parentheses and you're applying a power to a whole set inside the parentheses, that's when you multiply the numbers, not add. And I know that gets a little tricky to remember this rule is multiplying, but guess what you can always do? You can always write it all out just like we did in green. Okay, so when in doubt on these kind of problems, just write it all out and count them all up, and you should be just fine. Okay, so if you have y to the 8th to the 8th, you're going to multiply those two 8s, and you'll get y to the 64th. And if you have 2x cubed y to the 4th, and you take that whole thing to the 5th power, you're going to get 32x to the 15th, y to the 20th. Let's break this one down. This is 2 to the 5th power, because you're doing the whole thing to the 5th power. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That comes out to 32. This is going to be x to the 3 times 5, because you're going to multiply the exponents here. And then this is going to be y to the 4 times 5. Y times 5? Because that 5 on the outside is going to get multiplied by the exponents on the inside. If this problem didn't quite make sense, feel free to rewind this, look at it carefully, write down any questions you have. But at this point, I think we got it, and I'm just going to ask you to try a couple more practice problems to see if you can handle it. Once you've got those practice problems done, you are good to go.